Hey, happy Monday. Today is April 15th. Was a gorgeous day outside. It's now dark and gloomy. I hope everyone is doing well on this fantastic Monday. Um, and about to get indoors soon because it looks like the sky is about to open up and do what Mother Nature does best, right? Make us stop in our tracks no matter what it is we're doing. So hopefully everyone is safe. Excuse me. I know folks are have returned back to school from their spring break, so you probably had your first full week last week, or maybe into your second week. But nevertheless, I know as school leaders, you are in the full swing of things. So, welcome if you're joining in or if you're watching the replay. My name is Dr. D, and my passion is empowering school leaders, specifically urban school leaders, to lead with confidence so they can transform the instructional culture and feel affirmed in the work that they do. There are things that need to happen for that to be effective. And so, one of the reasons why it is my passion is I'm a product of urban public education, and I advocate for public education. I believe that we have the power to actually change the systems that are continually oppressing us and oppressing our most marginalized students. So we have to be, and I quote it all the time, as Margaret Wheatley said, brave enough to start the conversation that matters and brave enough to have the conversation that matters. But I'll also add that we have to be courageous enough to create the disruption that's needed to change the current conditions that our babies are facing. So the reason that like the purpose of this live every Monday is to connect with articles and find the data in articles and connect it to our work of leadership, the work of leadership, with hopefully the idea of changing the lens that you have for the work that you do, that everything is ingrained in data, everything from hard data to soft data, everything has to um, always come back to the data, and so that you can make better informed decisions with the work that you're doing. So, the article for today, and I picked this article too because last week, if you watched last week or joined in, last week was about leadership and emotional intelligence and what's needed for emotion, like for leaders to lead with emotional intelligence. It's absolutely critical to do that. And one of the biggest pieces that's needed for that to happen is for you as a leader to be aware of your triggers, right? Be aware of the things that push your buttons. And so if you have some time, go back and watch last week, which was April 8th, I believe, to get some suggestions on how to lead from emotional intelligence. And so it makes sense this week, after delving into how the leaders can manage their emotional reactions, right? That we now, like, the natural progression of this conversation is about feedback. Um, and not just feedback that you give to staff, right? But receiving feedback, because you become a better leader when you open the door to receiving feedback from your staff. And so keep that in mind. And I'm going to keep lifting that up during this time about the emotional intelligence piece when we're talking about feedback, like turning it into the fuel that you need to be a better leader and to really master your conversations, right? Like become this person who is really listening with intent, and making and connecting with people in a way that shifts behaviors and mindsets. So let's jump right in. I want to share this article that I was looking at from the Harvard Business Review. I will put it in the link in the comments. It's a really, 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 did I say really? It is a really good article, right? Like how leaders can get feedback when they need to grow. And it cites some oh boy, I don't know if you all saw that, but that's a power surge right there. Anywho, um, a really good article. And it cites this study here. Um, One of the things to really lift up with this article is um, the things that are like the two biggest points in this entire article are team leaders, um, where team leaders like provide an open, honest feedback, right? It shows that there's a 25% higher satisfaction rating for that leader when they open up the floor for feedback, like how they can improve their practice or how they can support their staff, right? And then the second thing is 90% of employees say feedback when delivered appropriately improves their performance, right? We know as school leaders that teachers want feedback. They want you in those classrooms. They want you to give them feedback that's actually going to shift and change their like instruction, right? Because teachers are in it because they really have an innate love for kids and that's what we need to tap into. I'll get into that conversation at another time. But um the other piece of this is in this article they talk about how when you climb up the ladder with as becoming from a teacher to a coach to a AP to a principal, a lot of times you don't get the feedback that you really want so that you can perform. Raise your hand if as a school leader you didn't really get the feedback other than just an evaluation to help you perform better. I That was me, I'm sure it's you too. um, and the article goes in to provide these really cool diagrams around um uh like how emotions play a huge part in your role as a leader, and then when it goes into the actual strategies that you can take, it is all connected to emotional intelligence. Like if you look at this first one, emotional, like embrace feeling negative emotions often, right? This is where triggers, what we talked about last week, this is where the triggers come in, where you need to be aware of your triggers. What are the words? What are the statements? What are the actions that trigger you in a very negative way, right? Because feedback is going to be critical, right? Not all of the feedback is going to be positive. A lot of times we sandwich feedback in between two positive things to make the blow a little easier, but you know negative feedback when you hear it. Um, but as a leader, your role is to open the door to receive that feedback, that critical feedback, right? How are you going to embrace that? Another one is have a go-to question. They give a really good suggestion on have a go-to question where you can ask your staff, like, what's one thing I can do to support you? I used to use that question all the time with my staff. Another one is embracing the other person's discomfort. Again, emotional intelligence, right? Having empathy, understanding, and being able to read people's emotions because what they're saying, there's something else going on behind the words that are coming out their mouth. What are they actually feeling, right? This is about feelings. And then they also say listen to understand and not respond. Again, emotional intelligence, the art of listening and having, engaging in effective communication. And then closing the loop, right? Making your listening tangible. If you are receiving feedback for something, make the change. Like show them that you are making the change to do something. Like they gave an example of how the Netflix CEO um, asked for three feedback from staff, and um, the staff shared that Reed cut people off, and so Reed put a rubber band around around uh, his wrist and ask staff to like pull on the rubber band anytime he's cutting people off. So those are the things, those are steps. That's one step to close the loop, right? To say, like, I heard what you said, and here is me taking action based on what you said so that I can become a better listener, a better leader. And then I believe there's one more, six, make giving feedback uh, a team habit, right? Not just venting, right? What are the solutions? How can we get, do better and be better in what we're doing? And so while this is about emotional intelligence, I know it's so funny because as a school leader, when I first started out, I was just like, listen, we got work to do. I don't have time for emotions. I don't have time for any of that. Let's go. Let's get it. Let's move students. Let's close these gaps with our marginalized kids. Let's do right by kids, right? Um, but you know, through time and experience, I learned that I really do need to tap into the emotions of staff. And when I did that and connected with staff in a way that truly said, I hear you, um, they heard me too, right? And so I want to make sure that this conversation is balanced, not just about emotional intelligence and how to get feedback emotionally, like preparing yourself emotionally for the feedback that staff is going to give you, but the balance of like with high expectations as a school leader, right? Because we talk about this soft stuff, which is so important, but we also need to balance it out with like, how are staff meeting the high expectations that we have for them, that you have for your staff, right? So, one of the things that, like, I'm going to give three strategies here. So, be specific and objective, right? When you're using the emotional intelligence lens, when you focus on being specific and objective, it's essentially like being aware of your own emotional state, right? And how it might color the feedback that you give. You know that old saying, mama said it all the time. It's not what you say, it's how you say it, right? Emotional intelligence helps you ensure that your feedback is driven by a genuine desire. And here's the thing, the feedback has to be driven by a genuine desire to help the other person improve, right? If you are giving feedback to the person for any other reason, don't give it. It has to be a genuine desire to see the other person improve, right? Rather than like, because you're frustrated or disappointed, again, identifying those triggers, you have to be aware of yourself as a leader first before you communicate with your staff. So before delivering feedback to your staff, you have to take a moment to self-reflect. Are you calm? Are you composed? Right? Is your intent constructive? Okay? This whole idea about, intent versus impact. Is it constructive? Think about what you want to say, write it down, practice it if you need to, right? Just to be sure that it's coming across in a way where you don't have to stammer over your words, that you really want to connect to your genuine desire to help the person improve. So, this self awareness helps maintain a really supportive tone and encourages your staff to take action, right? So, you want to balance the high expectations with that. So, in order to do that, focus on the specific behavior or outcome that aligns to the high standards that you have. So for instance, when a teacher implements like a new teaching strategy, access their knowledge with specific examples and encourage them to set a new goal to challenge them even further, right? Like how many teachers have you gone into and you like give them high ratings when you see them doing something, but you want to challenge them to go even further, go beyond that, right? Like your expectations are up here. You want them to meet it and then you push them even further, right? So this approach not only reinforces what works well, but also pushes for continuous improvement. So that's one on how to give feedback to your staff. The article, let me just be clear, is really about how we receive feedback from staff. Now I'm giving you suggestions on how to provide feedback to staff using this emotional intelligence lens, right? Number two, this is how the article comes into play here is creating a two-way dialogue, right? So this strategy hinges on your ability to actively listen, right? I am so guilty of this too. I have to be extremely intentional, even now when I'm having conversations with people because I'm hearing what they're saying, but I'm thinking about a response. And a lot of times, oftentimes, if you've engaged with me in any way, when I'm thinking, a lot of times I'm looking up because I'm trying to process my thoughts. But listening, like the ability to actively listen and empathize with the other person, is emotional intelligence, right? So when you do this, it will foster like an environment where feedback and is a dialogue rather than a directive, right? Because everyone knows you're the school leader. Everyone knows you're the person who has the plays the final decision and makes the final decision. But it doesn't have to feel like that, right? It has to be it should feel like a collaborative environment where there's dialogue, an exchange of thoughts and ideas where every party is welcome and receptive to it, right? So when you're being empathetic, you better understand the challenges that your team members face, especially your leadership team. Like they're your main priority. They are your babies, your leadership team, right? Um, so this insight not only allows you to tailor your feedback and approach, but it helps make it relevant and impactful, right? Showing that you value their input and perspective helps to build like an openness that is needed, especially for the hard work that you do, right? So, like to balance that now with the high expectations, this two-way dialogue allows for understanding and adjusting expectations based on individual circumstances, right? Without lowering standards. For example, if a teacher is struggling with classroom management, you're going to use your emotional intelligence to explore their specific challenges during the feedback session, asking them questions, right? Encouraging them to share their perspective and collaboratively plan something or develop a plan that like addresses the issues that they're having. Okay. And part of that too, like what this article is talking about, is like ask the right question. Ask the question about the go-to question. What's the one thing can I do to support you? What can I do to support you? Because that's what you're there for. You're there as the leader to support your staff, right? And if you see that you have a teacher that's struggling, you asking, how can I support you, speaks volumes. It absolutely speaks volumes. Um, I know a district that I was in, they have something called a Val Ed survey. And um, I really enjoyed receiving the feedback from the Val Ed survey. And I have to tell you, sometimes the feedback wasn't that great, right? But the truth of the matter is, and this is where, the article talks about like getting used to hearing negative feedback, like growing a thicker skin for hearing negative feedback so that it becomes okay to hear it, and you eventually change your perspective about it being negative and start looking at it as it being transformative. Because every piece of negative feedback that I receive from my Valid survey, from my community or my staff, I was intentional about doing or changing what they perceived as being ineffective, right? Because my goal is to be an effective leader. That was my goal. And I'm sure that's your goal too. So these opportunities to get feedback, receive feedback from your staff will fuel you, right? To making the changes that are needed. But you can't make those changes without getting that feedback. And that feedback is your data. That is your soft data that you must use all the time. Okay? Trust me. I mean, everyone's built different, but for me, when I heard something negative, I made it my goal to do what was needed to shift that perception by doing like listening. Okay, what do I need to do differently? So if you're watching the replay, share your thoughts here. Right, like what are some instances that you have had as a leader where you received some negative feedback and it triggered you, or and I should say it triggered you in a way where it actually gave you the fuel for you to do better, for you to learn more, for you to make a shift or a change in your behavior so that your staff can see that, okay, this leader is actually listening and taking our feedback, right? Now, naturally, we all know that there's a difference between venting and giving critical feedback. The venting, listen to that too. I won't say discard that, because the venting is coming, it's also feedback, but it's feedback that in the lowest form of expression, I should say, because it is not giving anything that critical, like specific, right? Which is number one, giving specific and objective feedback. Well, specific in this case to help you shift your behavior. But find out what are the feelings behind that venting because that's where the true data is, right? The feelings behind the vent. Okay. The third thing, so we had specific and objective feedback, and then we had two-way communication, right? Two-way dialogue. And then the third thing is focus on positives and opportunities. So, emotionally intelligent leaders, you all recognize the importance of motivation and morale, right? You know that it drives team performance. So when you focus on those positive on the positive end opportunities, you not only highlight like what's going well, but you also frame challenges as opportunities for growth. The whole growth mindset. All of these pieces are connected, right? This approach leverages positive emotions like optimism and confidence, right? That enhances learning and engagement. When your teachers are walking in there confident, when your team leaders are walking in there confident, when your, ILT is walking in confidence, you are shifting the dynamics, the ethos in your building, right? It's crucial to gauge when people's what people are emotionally ready to receive feedback, right? Some may need some more encouragement, and this is where I had difficulty. Let me tell you, I'm gonna be honest with y'all. I had difficulty with this because everyone is an individual and I realize everyone is not built like me. Where I don't need encouragement to do what I'm passionate about, other people do. And I had to learn that. I had to learn that. And thank God for the people on my leadership team who balanced that out for me. That would give me the critical feedback I needed like Miss T, I was Miss T at the time. Miss T, you're gonna have to change that wording, or you know, I know what you are saying, but let's try it this way, right? Like, thank goodness I had people on my team, my South people. If you know the compass, north, south, east, and west, I'm northeast all day long. Thank goodness I had South and West folks on the team to help balance that out. So make sure that you are, again, and this is this empathy, like knowing who your staff, who they really are, what makes them tick, right? Um, the high expectation piece for this is when you are focusing on like the positives, it's also crucial to frame the challenges, right, as opportunities for growth. Those This is where the high expectation piece comes in, right? Like celebrate the achievements and use them as a springboard for setting higher goals. For instance, if a department excels in student outcomes or a grade level, recognizing their efforts and discussing ways that that work that grade level or department did, how you can replicate that, how your staff can replicate that success to other areas, right? Or to innovate even further. So this strategy helps use positive reinforcement to motivate your staff towards higher achievement. Okay. You want to ensure that the recognition of success is directly related to the pursuit of excellence. You're just not giving out flowers and kudos for nothing. You're directing it to the high expectations that you have, right? Keeping that all in line. Okay. Positives and opportunities directly related to your high expectations and goals for as a school. Okay, so incorporating emotional intelligence into your leadership doesn't mean that you have to compromise your high expectations at all. Instead, it actually means that it enhances your ability to achieve these standards when you are fostering an environment of trust, of respect, right? Of mutual growth, because you're working on shifting the mindsets of your staff, which is going to change those behaviors, right? Which is what we'll be talking about on Saturday, April 20th from 12 to 2. It's a free masterclass giving more information and strategies that you can begin to implement right now. Even though it's the end of the school year, you need to start planting those seeds now, right? Because we are so busy about the work, we have to make sure that we're tapping into the soft data and the soft side of the work that we do, because it's challenging, right? Um, so as a leader, your challenge is to lead with your heart and rigor. They can both operate at the same time, right? Ensuring that your high expectations are really, really clear, super clear, right? But also that your team feels supported and valued, right? In the work that they're doing, and how their efforts, how you are valuing the efforts that they're putting in, right? Now, you're not going to give everybody those participation awards. We're not doing that. We're not doing like because you participate. We want to see like actual, like some growth too, right? Everyone doesn't get a participation award. Sorry, that's just me. I'm a Gen Xer. So, anywho, um, integrating emotional intelligence with the feedback strategies that I just mentioned will really help you deepen your relationship with your team, right? Your instructional leadership team and your staff, and help foster like this collaborative, resilient team culture. That's what you want, right? Let me tell you something. When felt and noticed this in my own school buildings, it was an amazing feeling to see the team, the synergy among the members of the team when everyone was in tune with one another, because we spoke a lot about things and how it made us feel. A lot of people feel like emotions shouldn't be in education, but I disagree. We have to talk about how we feel, because it is the fuel that gives us the energy to keep going in the work that we do, because this work is hard. I know you work hard every day, right? And so you have to tap into that emotional intelligence piece coupled with those high expectations that you have, okay? Remember, emotionally intelligent leadership is about it's more than just understanding emotions, right? It's about understanding like how to guide your actions and interactions toward more positive and productive outcomes. Know what your triggers are, right? From last week. Take a look at that from last week. Um, Being able to identify, let me go back and just like review the three strategies that help you provide effective feedback and also maintaining high expectations, right? So be specific and objective, right? Align that to your high expectations, right? Be very specific about what needs to improve. Okay. The second thing is creating a two-way dialogue, right? So actively listen and empathize with your staff. You hear that? Yeah, this guy opened up. um and again, this also means like you have to build your thick skin and receive feedback from them so that you can become a more effective leader, a more empathetic leader, right? Keeping those expectations high, right? Um, and then the third thing was focus on the positives and the opportunities for growth. Balancing those high expectations, you're going to frame opportunities for growth every single time, right? How can we get better? How can we be more collaborative? How can we close the gap quicker? How can we make this sustainable, right? Because that's what this is about. And so I hope that this was helpful. I will say that this article is absolutely amazing. It actually links to another article. There is the research in here. Where to go? Where to go? Here, this article uh, that shows a link to this uh, how your employees want negative feedback, uh, want the negative feedback you hate to give. Now, this is Harvard Business Review, but trust and believe, people are people. They want the feedback, regardless of what field that you're in. So, school leaders, make sure that you are giving feedback in the most empathetic way possible, but while maintaining your high expectations. And when you're receiving feedback, use that as fuel, right? Use that soft data to make the shifts and changes in your leadership. So your leadership is not just necessary. y'all. It is indispensable. We need you. Okay. Your emotional savvy is the key to unlocking the potential of your leadership team and your staff. So I want you to keep going, and I will catch you next week. And if you're outside, go and get inside. If the sky opened up, I want you to be safe. Okay. All right. This is Dr. D signing off, and thanks for tuning in or watching the replay. And share your thoughts at the bottom. Like, share your comments and your thoughts. I'd love to continue the conversation. Or you can connect with me. There is a book an appointment uh, in my profile. Who can think of the word in my profile? So we can have further discussions or even consultation. So again, thank you so much for checking or tuning in today or watching the replay. I appreciate you and keep going.